Hey, what's going on? It's Britton Frost, and this is Overthought and Understated podcast episode number 3. Today, I have with me my good friend Jake Rodrig. He's going to be helping me through some of these ideas, one of which in particular has been of great interest lately, and that is the debate between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson. We're going to be talking about some of that and also talking about music, music styles, music composition, as we're both musicians ourselves, and how some of that relates to this debate between Harris and Peterson. And we're also going to be trying to make as many broad connections as we possibly can across topics. So it should be pretty interesting. I'm pretty happy with how our conversation went, and I think my buddy Jake was a great first guest, and I can't wait to have him on again. And Jake, just like me, is just a guy. He has a degree in geomatics, and he works as a land surveyor in Houston, Texas. And he was in town for the weekend, so he stopped by on his way out. And so that was super convenient, and thank you for that. But, beyond his job, Jake is definitely one of the most genuinely curious people in my life. So he has no trouble whatsoever at doing what I really want to do in this podcast, is just broaden our understanding of certain topics and issues, and just drawing connections between reality, right? Because that's what we're trying to do, and ideally, we want to help each other with that. Figuring out where you're going wrong, where I'm going wrong, and seeing how we can improve our own views of the world. And sometimes that requires broadening topics, and then sometimes that requires narrowing them down and analyzing them more technically, and then broadening them again. And for the conversation to have sort of a pulsating effect like that, I think is very beneficial to everyone, and that's basically what we try to do here. So I hope we were somewhat successful in that, and I hope everyone else enjoys the things we have to say and the connections that we're making conceptually. So please enjoy this podcast episode number 3, Britton Frost and Jake Rodrig. And just so you know, so you're not completely and utterly confused, we start off the conversation. We were already actually having a conversation about where we'd like to visit next, and we both agreed Southeast Asia in general would be great, not only because of the history and everything, but because it's extremely cheap. So that's basically the topic we were on while I pressed record, just so nobody's lost about that. But anyway, here it goes.
Less than its plane ticket is
yeah.
Really, like, there's not much of a net loss if there is.
Right. I mean, even if you go somewhere for 2 weeks, if it's the case that your plane ticket cost more than your stay and all of your food and your expenses and everything, that's still a fucking awesome deal,
Yeah, fuck yeah, man.
Like, even if you're not even doing anything,
Yeah.
Like, if you're literally, like, just going on a vacation to, like, do nothing all day, every day, for 2 weeks, like, it's still a good deal, because you still have to stay somewhere.
Right.
Like, ideally, where do you want to stay whenever you're doing nothing? You want to stay at, like, a nice resort or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Or, like, even if it's, like, a little Airbnb type place, like a little shack on the beach, like, it's still going to cost a lot, because you're paying for that exclusivity,
Right.
So...
And even if you're not, like, always on the go, going to all these, like, I guess, attractions, you're still, like, gonna experience the culture, even if you're not doing anything. It might even be better because you experience the culture in a really subtle way,
right? In a more, like, organic way, a more, like, something that's closer to a local way, I guess. But still, it's like, there are parts of the world where you pay for that,
Definitely.
You pay for that experience, so
So why is this called the Viking Portable Library?
I think that's just a publisher, or
Well, Penguin is
it's
the
Penguins,
publisher.
right? Well, it's a series, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Portable
It's weird.
library in the sense that it's kind of a collaboration of multiple works.
Yeah.
So
I get you. Yeah. Man, it's weird how like Penguin is probably like, published most of the books on my bookshelf.
yeah, Penguin's good, man. They have some good like special editions of books and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
they have some cool like artwork on their covers and stuff too.
Definitely. That's one of the reasons why I'm so attracted to it. Like I have the Penguin publication of Gravity's Rainbow. That was the first Thomas Pynchon book I read, and
Yeah.
and man, it's a beautiful presentation.
Yeah.
Like it has those like what is it called, like syringed pages or serrated pages. So they're
So
like
it's easy to turn.
rough, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just a cool.
That's just
texture.
brilliant, Like whoever thought of that. Like remember those old fucking Bibles that are like they have that like gold, like the gold pages or whatever, and they're super slippery.
Yeah,
I don't know, because like we had those sometimes because I was like. I don't know if the Catholic churches had that. I'm sure they did because Catholic churches have gold all over their fucking church,
Yeah.
But no, I mean, being Presbyterian, like, we had these editions of Bibles and, like, hymnals and stuff that just had, like, the gold edging on the pages, and they were so fucking hard to turn. Like, there was no grip on them at all. It was, like, negative grip, Like, it was fucking impossible.
Yeah,
and they're like, turn to hymnal 273, and I'm like, fuck, like it's taking me forever to get to the page, and they're already singing, and I'm like, how are y'all already on the page? This is ridiculous. I'm like,
dude. Well, I mean, like if you create the Bible to have negative grip on the pages, like, do you really want the word of the Lord to slip away from the people?
literally slip through their fingers. Yeah, the word of the Lord is escaping us because the pages are too fucking smooth and slippery. Yeah.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, man. And maybe that is what the church wanted at some point. I don't know.
That could be dark. That could be an interesting thing to explore. Historically speaking, I don't know. Were there like any points in history where like the church, maybe it's when the church had like political power too, which was well for a large chunk of recorded history, obviously. But I mean, was there any
I guess
at any point like a dark time where the church was trying to like send some kind of like counterproductive message or counterintuitive message, like try to get people away from it, so maybe they would like rediscover the word like in a more natural way or something? I don't fucking know.
I don't know, man. I don't know too much about the history,
Like religious
of that
history.
stuff.
Yeah.
I have like a super basic understanding of the whole Protestant movement. I think which came from Lutheran or something. I know Veronica explained it to me.
Lutheranism was the first Protestant religion.
Yeah.
And like that's the sect that broke off of Catholicism when
said
Luther.
that everybody can interpret the Bible for themselves, right? Isn't that like the catalyst to the Protestant movement?
I'm not sure. I think like generally speaking, the way it went down was that Martin Luther, he just disagreed with some of the traditions and doctrines of the Catholic Church that he felt weren't in accordance with like the way he thought the Bible should be interpreted, I guess. And so he basically posted his 101 Theses, I think it was called. Like he had 101 problems. I'm just throwing that number out there. I can't even remember if that's fucking remotely accurate. But he like posted it on the door of a cathedral, and he got excommunicated, obviously, because he's questioning like some of the fundamental assumptions of the religion, and then he started Protestantism. And honestly, it's like I fucking grew up Protestant, but I don't know what the foundations of Protestantism are, like belief-wise, you know? Because, man, I've been to so many different Protestant churches. There are like probably over 300 of them by now.
Right.
Like I grew up Presbyterian. I've been to Methodist churches before. Those are pretty similar to Presbyterianism, and the actual ceremony is pretty similar to the Catholic Mass in general, only like there are a few word differences, and there's not like in some of the like readings, and we actually read from the Bible rather than from the little Catholic passage book, you know, and I don't know, there are just like subtle differences, but Methodist and Presbyterian services and beliefs in general are pretty similar. I've been to Baptist churches. I don't know what it means to be Baptist because there are so many different types of Baptist churches, and I've been to some like more moderate ones that are kind of like what I was used to growing up, and then there are others that were just completely radical, you know? Like there are some Southern Baptists that are like, it's weird, they have like really liberal beliefs about scripture, but they have very conservative beliefs about lifestyle. And
That's weird.
yeah,
That
if
is
you could
weird.
if you could like imagine like just applying like political ideology to, you know, religion, it's like that was the weird dichotomy that they lived inside of. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Well, could you say like the Protestant movement is like, you know, like branched off into all these different religions? Like it's sort of similar to how electronic music has so many goddamn subgenres.
Right.
You know what I mean?
well, yeah, so, you know,
More so than other like core genres of music.
yeah, because like, except okay, with music, it's like somebody's just they're trying to express themselves in an original way,
Right.
and like they don't want to be labeled as whatever this specific genre is because it doesn't encompass what they do, because they have like an original contribution to music in general. So but I mean, it's kind of the same with religions like breaking off from one another, because like it's like they'll, in the same way, they say, oh, like we want some originality that or some label that describes us better, and we have a set of beliefs that doesn't quite line up with like this other sect that we're trying to break off from.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing, you know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, you know, like the idea of the cafeteria Catholic who like kind of picks and chooses what he wants to believe out of the set of Catholic, you know, traditions. It's kind of like you can do that and form a new religion, like from nothing, you know? You can just kind of like pick and choose whatever you want from every religion and then like make up some stuff on top of that. And
like
boom.
the existing you know, the existing genre classifications help you to describe this original individual identity that you may be shooting for.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a good, you know, I mean,
Is it kind of like an ideal, like an absolute, you think?
what?
In a sense, like the original, like, or is it the opposite? What do you say?
The original, like, what do you mean? Like, if you take rock music and break it down into different subgenres, like, is rock the absolute?
Or, well,
What do you
it's
mean?
it's like the most generic form of what you're doing. Or,
It's
you know,
it's really generic, but like because
Like,
like
who would
absolute
be
truth
a rock
exists
band?
so far outside of us. Like, there's really
Right.
like. It's not the absolute, but
Well,
it's
no.
pretty. But it's getting pretty close
It's
to
not,
it.
it's not
as
an
far
ideal
as
to
we
shoot
can tell.
for. I mean, I think there are some people who want to play rock music. They just want to play super generic rock music. I don't know exactly what that means. I guess you could take like, I don't know, who would you say is like the most generic
The
rock
most
band
generic rock band would have to be like
ever? Metallica, or like
AC/DC,
AC/DC,
or
like some
Kiss.
some classic rock, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
But
some-
not like progressive classic rock, like
Right.
like straight up, like we will rock you.
Yeah,
like,
4/4 timing, like yeah, they
You
actually
know.
talk about rocking.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the lyrics.
yeah, like the kind of thing that Ricky would be into from Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah.
You know, like he's seen, you know, he hates Rush because they talk about like, you know, conceptual things like you know, the brain and
Yeah,
science.
They're just complicated.
You know,
everything,
and
yeah.
he just wants to listen to somebody who, I think he was talking about maybe Halifax because that's a Canadian rock band.
Yeah.
But I may be wrong. Don't quote me on that. He's
Oh,
just
wait.
like- they were like
Yeah.
ROCK, you know. And he loves it. Eats that shit up.
Yeah, I guess like when I hear Halifax band, he's probably talking about another band that is actually from Halifax, Nova Scotia. But
But I
Like,
think
you
there
remember
is
that,
a
like-
band called Halifax.
yeah, from
isn't there?
California, there used to
Oh,
there
okay.
used to be like this kind of progressive like kind of like emo screamo band. I think from Thousand Oaks, California. I think I just
Really?
remember that because I remember going on their MySpace page and seeing like where they were from. I know they're from somewhere in California. I think
I
Thousand
gotcha.
Oaks. But actually, I kind of used to be into them. I had an EP by them. They were pretty cool. I just liked they were just like high energy. Like you remember my old band, Painting the Seconds? How
Yeah.
it was kind of like high energy. It had kind of that pop punk energy to it, along with like some
Add the
like
drive in a little bit.
yeah,
maybe?
yeah, like a little more like experimental stuff mixed in with it, but it was nothing too out there, you know?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like that's kind of how they were. They had elements
Yeah.
of like
I like imposing those sorts of limitations on creativity.
yeah, because it tests you to see how far you can take like your creativity working within that framework, you know?
Exactly. That was my initial thing I wanted to do with Gold Lust, like the EP
Oh, yeah.
we released. Like basically, I was, my arguing was a progressive metal band, and I
Right.
was like, man, I just want to make straightforward emotions, and like I'm gonna limit it so much that like these emotions are just gonna imply like punk rock aggression ethos, and like it's instrumental, so we don't really have anything political to say,
Right.
just like super limited,
Yeah.
but that sort of didn't stay with me because I just can't help but expand outward,
Right.
Um,
Well, you don't feel like you can take that concept and broaden it? Like,
I mean, I definitely could, but like the thing is that I never ever write with intention, ever.
yeah.
So like,
I think that's the right way to go.
I mean, if I ever did in my life, it was garbage. Like anything that you'll ever hear me play live or recorded, it was not written with an intention. Because
Yeah.
if I ever write something with intention, I promise you it's fucking trash.
Yeah.
So I mean, I sit down with my guitar and it's like ideas. I don't know where they come from. You don't know where your thoughts come from, which is
Yeah.
like the premise for Sam Harris saying that free will doesn't exist.
Right.
But like, I mean, that's a pretty like, I don't know. That's pretty far speculation, But yeah.
No, I
it's
mean,
like,
I think there's definitely some validity to that. Like, sometimes like when it comes to something like free will, you feel like you're faced with the question: do you believe in free will or do you not believe in free will? Like, as if that's an important question.
It's not.
I don't think that's an important question at all. I think like what you do is either assume you have free will and live accordingly, or assume you don't have free will and try to live accordingly. But good
Right.
fucking luck, because I don't think you can do it. I'm pretty sure it's fucking impossible. You know.
Yeah.
But
I guess
that's
it just
what's
depends
so
on your
funny.
relationship with free will.
Yeah.
Depending on your relationship to free will, you might be able to live beautifully or not, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it depends. Like, you might a certain like version of like nihilism might follow from your rejection of free will.
Yeah.
And maybe you're comforted by the idea that we're a speck in the universe and we can't know anything, and there's no truth out there, and we don't and that like everything's kind of deterministic, morally speaking. And I think like most people who would believe that would probably put morality within the scientific knowledge framework. I think you kind of have to. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe there's an argument for the contrary, but
I think I have an argument for the contrary
Yeah.
because the way I viewed nihilism, and that's sort of synonymous with like believing that absolute truth is unattainable.
yeah,
Within like our objective reality that we sort of live inside, and our limitations as humans, as because we're finite beings, not infinite. The idea that absolute truth is unattainable means that I can just live completely in the abstract conceptual world. Because I don't know why, because it's like it's
well,
like
yeah,
there's all these different tangents that I'm trying, a lot of times like language really frustrates me because it takes so much effort and work to make myself understood, and
Right.
like my brain just starts cycling really fast through all these like tangents, and I'm trying to stamp a flag on each one of them.
Right.
And like by the end of it, when I try to make a point, it's just like I haven't put a flag on any one of those
Okay.
tangents.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is like I'm really comfortable in the abstract world.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what I'm interested in, at least at
Yeah.
this moment in my life. And objective reality is really just a means to expand my abstract conception of reality.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Do you think that your version of like nihilism, that you kind of seem to want to call it nihilism to some extent, right? Do you think that licenses you to act however you want to act, morally speaking?
No.
No.
I
So
don't.
where what? So you would agree that there is some like moral framework beyond that through which you govern yourself, even if it is like you have free will, you believe that, so you're autonomous, you believe morally. Like,
Well,
what's the nature of that sort of?
Well, I think maybe I'm like taking nihilism from the nihilists, and maybe they would be pissed off.
Like
at me.
hijacking the term.
Yeah, I'm
like, so to
hijacking the
speak.
term because it might be just because I'm attracted to like nihilist punk rock, like
Yeah.
I'm attracted to like fucking grindcore where they're just like, I don't care where I go when I die. But the
Right.
thing is like a lot of that stuff has a lot of cool existential things to say.
Yeah.
So like I might be hijacking the term, but yeah, I mean like me and you, our recent conversations over the phone and all, I feel like our viewpoints are converging.
Yeah, for sure.
And
It's just
so-
in the details and the technicalities that like we don't totally line up, but I think that's
Mm-hmm.
because like we're dancing around the broader concepts in a similar fashion, just like from different angles.
Right.
Like we're doing two different dances, but we're on the same dance floor. You know what I mean?
yeah. The way I look at it is
Like
is,
I'm doing the worm and you're doing backflips. You know?
that's fucking an adorable picture in my head.
Well, that's what we do. You know?
Well, like I have actually a different like geometric conception of that in my mind. Like I view us as like I'm on, longitude in 90 degrees west, and you're on 92 degrees west. So like at the equator, we're like at our most divergent.
Right.
But that's not where we're at right now. Like where we're at
Yeah.
right now is like nearer the poles, right? Or nearer the North Pole or South Pole. It doesn't really matter which, because they both converge completely in an infinitesimal point.
Exactly. Right.
Now the thing is like it's sort of impossible for us to get to the poles because,
Right.
could that infinitesimally small point where those great circles converge actually exist? Like we can't really say. Like a string theorist might say that because they might believe that the fundamental particle that makes up the fundamental nature of reality is infinitesimally small,
Right.
to where it has no dimension at all. Like he might believe that no dimension could exist.
Right.
And I'm not saying it can't. It could very well exist. But like as far as me being a finite being, I can't go stand on that North Pole. I can
Yeah.
only stand on
Well,
it
yeah.
to a certain accuracy.
Yeah.
Like to within like a certain subsection of a centimeter.
Yeah.
And so that's why I view us as like maybe I guess 87 degrees north latitude,
Right.
But like 90 degrees west longitude, and then you're on the 92 degree west longitude,
Yeah, and yeah.
And I
see
would
what
say
you're saying.
that like listening to Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, I would say that like in that podcast, I forget what it's called, On Truth or whatever,
Yeah.
in that podcast, I believe that Peterson and Harris were at the equator on their longitudinal lines,
Right.
and they may not be at 90 and 92 like me and you are. Like at
No,
the equator, me
they're
and
not.
you are divergent at our most divergent, but not like
Right.
really that far apart.
We're not
Like-
that polarized.
Like we're
Yeah.
only crossing like state lines at that scale.
Sure,
know?
sure.
But like they might be on opposite sides of the world. at the
Yeah.
at the equator. You know, if they were on opposite sides of the world at the poles, it wouldn't matter that much.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah, for sure.
But the thing is the reason why I voted yes for them to do another podcast is because I do believe that because me and you are converging at the poles, you know, the connections that me and you can establish right now,
Yeah.
they're interesting connections, and they're connections we can be passionate about, but they're not gonna fucking really cut through reality like we could if we were diverging completely
Oh,
at
of course,
opposite sides
yeah.
of the world. So, like, because I do believe that Peterson and Harris can, if they could put their ego aside,
Yeah.
and they could say, look, man, like, instead of coming up with silly thought experiments to destroy my viewpoint, which what Sam Harris was doing the whole time with
Right.
his micro examples.
Yeah.
Let's genuinely try to come up with like some sort of conception that will
Right.
connect our viewpoints.
Right.
Because if you
Right.
do that, you're really gonna flourish creatively.
Yeah.
And like that's a much broader connection that you're reaching
Yeah.
for now. You know, and it's really gonna expand your perspective more so than like the tiny connections that we might be making
Yeah.
near the poles, you know?
Right,
And I
right.
think they can do it, man. I really do.
Yeah, well, I think in order for that to happen, Harris is going to have to realize that the thing that I said in my first podcast that gave you some clarity, that we live in a conceptual reality, not an objective reality. And that objective reality is part of our conceptual reality.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't think he believes that. You know, I think he believes we live in a strictly objective world. That's what materialists believe. So, you know, at this point, it's like, I think they could, even despite the fact that they disagree on that point, I think they could have an interesting conversation about religion and science. But again, I'm like worried about where Harris's lines of questioning are going to go, and it's going to end up being a bitter debate, just like this last podcast, I think, because they don't agree on enough at the foundations of like belief and truth in general, you know. And like I think Harris was right to like keep talking about truth in some sense. I don't like the way he did it, but like the idea to try to pin down their conceptions of truth before they move forward, I think was correct. And the fact that they couldn't move past that tells you something about where they stand and where other conversation topics are going to lead, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's almost like in this sense, you know, I think with the truth matter, you know, you were saying how in one of our previous conversations that you didn't, you know, the main thing that bothered you was that they didn't really talk about absolute truth at all.
They didn't acknowledge it.
They didn't even acknowledge it, yeah. And I think that would have been important because it would have given them an ideal to conceptualize, an absolute to conceptualize.
It might have been
like,
a starting point to
it
make that
would have been
broad
a better
connection.
Yeah, it would have
know?
been a better starting point. Like, okay, that's what philosophers do, though. We start with like the broad conceptions of things, and we try to work down to the details and the technicalities. Whereas, like science, like when science tries to reach truth of some degree, they do the opposite. Like it's a bottom-up process rather than a top-down process. They start with the data, the details, the technicalities, and they try to work up. And that's why, you know, you can establish higher order truths from not of the highest order, but higher order truths than just on the sensory like data level. That those micro example truths, you know, you can build up from that by accumulating data and fitting it together in a logical way, and especially across disciplines. And once you get to that point, you're building to an either higher level of truth, you know, in the hierarchy. But like, yeah, I think you're right. Like this conversation is by nature a philosophical conversation, the debate on truth, and they should have started with the absolute.
Yes,
They should have taken the philosophical route of top down, you know.
Right.
And the fact that Harris was so obsessed with the technicalities on the bottom level, and you know Peterson was speaking over him because he was trying to do what I'm suggesting they should have done. Like there was just way too much separation, polarized separation in their foundations, you know. So, and at that point, it's like I don't know. I've heard Peterson in other interviews and talk in his book as well and in his lectures about the bottom level technicalities in a pretty sophisticated way. And I've heard him speak about what he was trying to do the other day in like taking the top-down philosophical approach to knowledge and truth and any number of topics. You can do that with any topic. That's what it means to speak about the nature of something, right? And that's what philosophy strives to do with everything. And that's why it's useful, because it gives you literally a broader way of looking at the thing you're doing. You know, there's a philosophy of everything. But so I've heard Peterson speak from both ends, but I've only heard Harris speak from either the technical end or somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, he's never spoken like content-wise about the nature of things in a truly critical fashion. You know, it's like he still has his if he tries to, he still has his like materialist presuppositions underlying the things that he's saying about the nature of knowledge, the nature of truth, the nature of science, and all this stuff. So it places a limit on how broad he can expand his theories, you know? And like this is the problem with expanding theories, is like it's the precision versus accuracy debate in epistemology, which is basically the field that they were working with, you know, in that conversation. Epistemology being, you know, how do we know what we know? And so, like, a theory is meant to be specific to a certain point. It's meant to be precise, so that whatever content you're trying to build a theory of can be used for some goal, or you know, if you apply a formula to something, it's meant to control the variables, you know. And so what you get is precision, and it might be helpful in that you achieve your goals that are, you know, established. But the more you try to broaden that theory or that formula to account for more variables, the less accurate you get in terms of truth.
Right. At that precise level, they might be shooting at the wrong fucking target.
Right.
Like,
right. Oh, exactly.
Like
they could be.
Not even
they could be way
like
far
on the
away
outside of the target, but just a straight up wrong target.
Right. Again, I think
that's what happens when you don't
they could be
scientific tools inside of a moral framework, right?
Because the moral framework it's a broader framework that can account for more. You know, like there are moral questions across disciplines, but there are only scientific questions about science. They're about things that you can explore scientifically, and those things are limited. You can't ask scientific questions necessarily about like religious matters, you know. I mean, okay, maybe you can approach like what's going on inside the brain, you know, materially speaking, when someone is praying. Okay, that's like something worth exploring scientifically, but you're not going to extract the meaning of prayer from the neuronal processes in the brain, you know.
Yeah.
So like but the meaning of that is a more religious and broader and even a moral question. You know, it's like why do people pray? I don't know. I mean, how would you explore that? How would you explore that scientifically? It's just not a scientific matter. I think
it's part of what people do when they try to broaden their conceptions of reality.
Right.
That's why they're praying.
Yeah.
That's why we're philosophizing.
Yeah.
You know? And you know, I don't know. I don't think that moral truth is the highest truth.
right.
I think that that there's an abstraction above that, you know, and I think Jordan Peterson would probably agree. I think he said it actually, is that moral truth is true enough.
Right. It's true enough, and it's broader than scientific truth.
Yeah.
Right. So
and everything that inside of your conceptualization of reality should be, you know, what you determine is true enough for you and for, you know, for the world that you inhabit.
Right.
But like I always know that there's an abstraction outside above, you know, what I'm capable of, you know, attaining.
Right.
And that's why I think that, you know, this concept that has existed for so long, God, you know, the unknown, or the fundamental nature of reality, or what Buddhists would call the mystic law. That's why I think it's like such a fascinating thing to contemplate.
Yeah.
You know, because like if you think of this thing, this absolute truth, like think of it as a super organism, an infinite being, you know, that encapsulates absolute truth. Like it is absolute truth, and it's infinite in every way. You could imagine that it would have perfect language and perfect communication skills. You know, like one thing about communication, I think I already said, is that it's so exhausting for me personally. I find it super cumbersome to make myself understood, and even with you, who like we're at the poles, man, we're fucking converging on each other. Like it's still, that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of effort and work I'm putting into like communicating with you right now. You know, and so like the idea, like the concept that it's irrelevant whether this concept exists or not. You know, because I can you know, formulate it in my head that this could exist, something that has perfect language. It's just like there's so many tangents that you can go from that and help expand your own conceptualization, you know, and it's interesting to me to think about, you know, something that would be able to communicate perfectly, you know, but at the same time, like it's such an abstract thing that's unattainable, that it's hard to even come up with like objective things that would result from that. You know?
Yeah, well, on the subject of language, I mean, language is just one of the tools we use to try to communicate truth and communicate ideas and try to like reach an understanding of a better conception of reality. You know, whenever we're converging, that's what we're doing. Like we're trying to improve our own as well as one another's conceptions of reality, seeing where they meet, where they don't, and how we can sort that out and improve it, right? So, like, but language itself and speech is only one way of doing that, and it's a pretty it's a difficult tool to use sometimes, especially like the more complex.
It's so complex.
The more complex an idea is, the more difficult it is to put it into words. And I don't know. I kind of believe, and this might be something that I take for granted that I should question more. But I've always thought that, especially from reading Wittgenstein, because this is a question that he was concerned with in both of his like polarized theories of language over the course of his career, was how am I to say what I mean? Because he took for granted, I think, at the foundation of some of his ideas, that the idea is separable from the means by which we express the idea.
Oh, yes, certainly.
But I think it has to be, because we live in a conceptual world that's kind of hierarchically structured. And like there are multiple dimensions of the hierarchy, and like multiple hierarchies of like knowledge and truth that we're working inside of. Like you have one for music, and you have one for like these philosophical matters that we're discussing. But at some point, as you go higher up the hierarchy, they converge. You know, there's overlap in them, and even in some of the details. And I think in like the examples that we can give that are analogous for both. You know, but I think like the assumption that we can say what we mean and we should be taken at face value for everything that we say is a dangerous one.
I agree.
And I think that's something that Sam Harris hasn't seen past. I think that's one of the reasons why like his style of communication and Peterson's styles of communication are so different and almost impossible to some degree of complexity to converge, because like Peterson's a firm believer in the thing that I'm saying about language, and you seem to agree with that the idea comes first, and our means of expressing the idea is just like this secondary shit tool that we suck at, you know? And like Carl Jung, he got that idea from Carl Jung. I mean, you read Carl Jung, it's almost as if you have to read all of him to understand any of him. It's the same thing with Nietzsche to an extent, even though Nietzsche is more like, he's more Hammer-like in the way he expresses his ideas. But because he's Hammer-like, and because there is that greater degree of complexity, and there's a greater level of like coherence among all of the things he says, it's easy to take one of his aphorisms out of context and just obsess over that and misinterpret it. You know, it's like It's like it sounds like the
Yeah.
death of God is like a pretty easily interpretable thing, and the fact that he didn't believe in God
Hell
and that
no.
he was an atheist, and you
Yeah.
put all those ideas together and you think, oh well, it's something that he was celebrating. It's like, no,
Right.
he wasn't celebrating the death of God at all. He was worried for humanity because we wouldn't know how to govern ourselves, because we wouldn't have an absolute of some sort to by which we measure our moral behavior,
Yeah.
So, and that's exactly what happened in the 20th century. We ended up trying to govern ourselves through fascism and communism, and 100 million people died as a result of it. But I mean that example alone, it's a big example, but you might think like, you might think that some of those problems in the 20th century were founded in like economics or something like that. But no, I think it's ideology of the highest degree that caused it, of the broadest degree. It wasn't just economics and money. It wasn't just like battle over resources. It wasn't battle over power. Those were all parts of it, right?
Yeah.
But you can't, reduce it down to one of those things. And so, you run into the same problem with any like philosophical subject, every philosophical topic, like you can broaden it to higher and higher levels of complexity, and account for more as a result of that. And that's the beauty of expanding your viewpoint on a particular thing, is that like the more you expand it, the more you see the interconnectedness at the higher level of the hierarchy of
Right.
knowledge of that thing. And then things start to converge,
Yeah.
toward the absolute, whatever that is,
Right.
And I think like that's, so yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think that's
I think
Fair enough,
everything. I mean, I think everything you just said. The complexity of language. These ideologies seem to come from like the higher evolved parts of our brain, right? I think
right?
like that's exactly why I love existing in the abstract realm so much, and I
Yeah.
prefer to express myself through just raw emotion that comes from the part of our brain that's more ancient,
Right.
because for some reason it feels like to me that is actually closer to the absolute truth.
Oh, okay. So if you stay in touch, not to cut you off, but if you're more in touch with your instincts, you feel like you're closer to an absolute truth that sort of a Darwinian framework would aim toward.
Sort of,
Or-
but like to say instinct implies that it has something to do with like my survival, and like that's not really what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Because what I'm saying.
Well, we
is,
have
like,
sophisticated instincts, though. Like we've evolved for our like, I mean, and this is kind of founded in temperament. Like the degree to which our instincts vary, like just yours and mine. Like I feel like I don't have some of the animal instincts that some people do. Like and you may not either. Or we don't have like all the same animal instincts that our evolutionary ancestors have. Chimpanzees, like they have a different way. They have a way of governing themselves that's different on some levels and the same on some levels. And the places in which it's different, I think, is part of our instinct. Like I guess one area in which they're the same is that like we don't want the biggest baddest motherfucker to rule, because the biggest baddest motherfucker is a douchebag, and he's not good at deliberating with people. He's not good at getting along with people. So he'll rule for a while, but then like it only takes, like as Peterson says, it only takes like two chimps that are 3/4 of his size and strength to take him down.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is the ruler of the pack ends up being someone who's more like interpersonally intelligent. So like he's better at people, and he has that sort of power side to him too. That's one element in which like one area in which we're the same, but like where we're different is that I mean humans have, maybe this is like something that's founded in our more social nature, but like we seem to be more patient, we seem to be more calculated, in our reasoning. But I don't know. I mean, if you force a person or even a group of people into being too controlled, like their instincts may take over at some point and they may rebel, and that's like what anarchism does,
Yeah.
It's like we want chaos, we want more chaos. There's too much order.
Well,
It happens on the macro scale.
I think all I'm trying to say about
Sorry, that probably was a huge like tangent.
no. It helped expand, kind of what I'm trying to say, and it's not that I want chaos. It's that I'm pretty like established in my objective world, and I've learned how to survive, and I've learned some skills that allow me to complete the tasks in my job, and get compensated, to live in this society that's, I don't know, but I guess where I'm going is that not necessarily concerned with like attaching my abstract conceptualization of reality so much to objective reality. As when I'm talking about how I prefer to reside in this abstract realm inside of my raw emotions, it's like so far removed from objective reality that I'm just talking about feeling these ancient things that move me, just like completely, like playing music and you just completely get into a flow state,
right?
And it doesn't really matter how anybody around you may be reacting. I may be just sitting on my bed, writing a new song with nobody around me. And so like I guess all I'm saying is like inside of that little limited abstract world of mine, there's not much complexity going on. It's like I feel like it's closer to absolute truth because I'm not really having to communicate. I'm not having to fight with myself. Like I'm not trying to, like, I'm not struggling to order all of my different perspectives into one conceptual viewpoint because I'm just in the moment and I'm just feeling these primal emotions that move me, and to me I have a really hard time explaining where my point is with this, but I guess it's just it. I kind of lost where I was going with it, to be honest.
That's okay. We can edit out silence.
But I don't know. It just I just feel like this abstract world I'm talking about. It's easier for me to connect to this absolute truth that may or may not exist. It's easier for me to connect to it through raw emotion. Like it's not that hard to communicate raw emotion.
Right.
It's not that hard.
Well, one reason it's not hard is because you can do it through action rather than through words.
Exactly.
It's hard to like communicate a super complex, purely conceptual version of an idea, but if you have like an emotion that would communicate that more accurately, it's like you can just cry about it, or you can just like I don't want to like reduce it down to like one simple behavior, but you know what I mean, like if your understanding of something is founded in an emotion, then expressing that emotion in its rawest sense and its rawest manifestation it tells you everything you need to know.
That's why tragedy speaks to me so much,
Yeah.
Because it just really taps in, when you combine a meta hero with a tragic story.
Yeah.
That really just taps into my emotion, and it just moves me, across mountains. And I guess the thing is I very much enjoy dissecting art
Yeah.
with complexity,
Right,
with
right.
language. I love that aspect. of critiquing.
It's fun. It's fun to dance around.
It's super enjoyable
That's
to
what it
really
is. It's a dance.
really dive into and
Right.
critique a piece of art. Write an essay on it. That complexity is fun and awesome.
Yeah.
But like to me at the foundation of that is that raw emotion in the first place,
Right,
and
right.
it just seems like that's closer to this abstract realm that I believe is sort of outside the moral truth that has any other sort of truth nested inside of it.
Right.
Because really, like when you choose to wear an emotion on your sleeve,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't observe it with an intellect,
Yeah.
that's the truest thing you could do, and it may be
Right.
terrible because you sort of
Yeah.
have to use your intellect if you want to nest your actions inside of a moral framework.
Right.
You
Right.
have to.
Yeah.
Because if you just completely wear your emotion on your sleeve, well, you might kill somebody.
Exactly. Right.
And I mean, there's there's like this primal aspect to that's like seems like it's pretty close to like the abstract world of feelings.
Yeah.
And states of being.
Right.
But just I don't know, it's just objective that we've evolved to higher states of being where we can use our intellects to control
Control what's already there, what we already know to be true. You
Right.
know, like on a broader level
Right.
of analysis. Yeah.
Right. But when you go into the art world,
Yeah.
there's, I guess you could say there's objective dangers in that world, definitely, definitely. But like as an artist, if your purpose is to be liberal, which is what I view, I mean, the liberal arts, you want to be subversive
Yeah.
and not shocking to be cheap,
Right.
but shocking just to subvert expectations and
Right.
to grow new possibilities and new perspectives, to
Yeah.
allow people to look at the same thing from infinitely many angles.
Yeah.
You kind of have to not be too worried about the danger of like living completely in emotion,
Right. Yeah.
and a lot of times what happens is like you may create, what'll happen like in a soundtrack, like say you take a movie soundtrack, if you just completely work within your primal emotions,
Yeah.
you may end up creating this piece of art that perfectly, accents the
Right,
film
right.
that you're soundtracking, So
For
like
sure.
if your film is a tragic story of a meta-hero and you completely work inside of raw emotion to create that soundtrack, but it's applied to like this film that may have a lot of language a lot of complexity, a lot of intellectual complexity on top of it.
Right.
Like that deep raw emotion that's reverberating underneath all of that is just gonna fucking really throw it in your face.
Yep. No, I think that's what art is for. You say that there might be some like objective danger in artistic expression, but art should already be safe in that it is the means by which you channel your emotion to communicate it to the world.
Right.
Like you do it through the canvas, you do it through your instrument, you
Yeah.
do it through this film, and like, yeah, the message itself could be dangerous, but that's not your problem.
And there's different interpretations. It's not your problem.
Exactly. It's not your problem because it's up for the viewer to interpret it for themselves. And there might be a sort of objective message, and I say objective in the sense of what emotion is true to you. Mm-hmm. And you're the one creating the art. So you are trying to send a message of some abstract, nature, but it's not your problem if someone misinterprets it. That's
not.
their problem.
No,
it's their lack of attention
That's
toward
why
the matter.
critics are so important, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm not talking about like critics who have recognition. I'm talking about every single person
Is a
who
fucking
actually
critic.
wants to consume
Yes.
art should be a critic.
Yeah, they should
You
be.
know,
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're not interested in dissecting art on a deeper level, unless you,
Right.
if you only want to consume art for entertainment, that's fine. Don't be a critic.
Right.
But if you don't care about entertainment, and if the only reason
You only
why
care about the meaning.
yeah, if you consume art because you want to grow as a person, well,
Right.
then critiquing it is super important
Yeah.
because that's how you interpret it. That's how you establish objective relationships with art.
Right.
But yeah, it starts at this primal level that has capacity to go in two different directions.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it does start in chaos, man, and
Yeah,
it's
it
not
does.
until you
It's
interpret
chaos before you channel that through the art itself.
before you order it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Like
That's the
it
order.
starts in chaos, but then you take it and you kind of like put it halfway between the line between order and chaos because
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
now you're starting to speak about it in a complex manner.
Yeah.
And you make all these connections, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's one of the things I was saying, like why it would be so interesting if Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson could actually make that broad, that connection that's it's half the circumference of the equator.
Yep, yep.
That's a huge reach. They need really long arms to do that.
Yeah.
But the
right.
thing is like it has more potential to expand those infinite perspectives that we need to expand so that we can get closer to that abstract realm where absolute truth may or may not reside.
Right.
And like I have a pretty objective example of that. I mean, it's gonna take a lot of my identity into it, like the things I'm passionate about.
Sure.
But like for instance, the Dillinger Escape Plan is like one of my all-time favorite bands. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, like the thing is there are many connections to that band that I love.
Yeah.
But the thing is all those connections are like me and you, where we're converging at the poles. I
Right.
like those connections. I
Right,
like them.
right.
Like I like that Aphex Twin has this direct connection to Dillinger because they're probably the only outfit that has ever covered an Aphex Twin song.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
before they ever covered it, before that ever happened, they changed extreme punk rock because of its influence. Nobody's ever
right.
tried to turn that IDM into nobody's ever tried to really create IDM with actual physical instruments
Right.
until them, And also, I like the connection between Dillinger and Zach Hill, for instance. Like it's an obvious logical collaboration. Like they did one song together that you can find on MySpace. It never went further than that.
Okay.
But it
I don't
makes
think I've ever heard of
it
it.
makes complete sense that the guitars from Dillinger Escape Plan and Zach Hill would
Would work.
collaborate.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I
Right,
love
right.
that connection because it makes so much sense to me, and it's two things that
Yeah.
I'm passionate about. Okay.
Right.
Now let's go to the vocalist.
Yeah.
So Greg's new project is the Black Queen. It's like this dark synth pop sort of thing. Super fucking dark, super just synth pop, right? Makes perfect sense that he would do something like that.
Right.
I love the connection.
Yeah.
Because the thing is like even though Dillinger is so, chaotic and unbound,
Yeah.
they always bring in this extremely catchy, simplistic aspect into their music to the point where like Greg has these vocal lines that are, they're so fucking catchy and just reach out to you that you could almost call it bubblegum pop, but it's not because
Right.
it has like these dark undertones, right?
Right.
So like all of those things make perfect sense, okay?
Yeah.
All of that, but this is what doesn't makes this is the connection I didn't like. So they called it quits. They just released their last album.
Okay.
And I guess maybe that's why they have some different side projects going on. So Ben Weinman, the guitarist, he's in a side project called Giraffe Tongue Orchestra with Thomas Pridgen on drums.
Yeah.
From Mars Volta.
Yeah.
I love that connection.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Thomas Pridgen.
Makes perfect sense, right?
Right.
Okay.
You would think, right?
The other guitarist in the band, guitars from Mastodon. That's an okay connection. I could get down with that. You
Yeah.
know, I'm down it. I'm about it.
It
know?
sparks curiosity at the very least.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I don't love it like I love Pridgen and
Right.
Wyman
It doesn't seem
together.
quite as ideal, but it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see it working.
Okay?
Right.
So, but this is the off-putting connection for me
Okay.
that has changed recently. And this is why the broad, diverging connection is so much more powerful than like the small, intimate connections
Yeah.
that I like on first glance.
Okay.
This is why their album, their little project, which is essentially a ridiculous supergroup, has grown on me to a point where I actually like it now, whereas first I hated it.
Right.
And because the vocalist is from Alice in Chains, and I was like,
Okay.
ew, like I don't like that connection. I don't like that connection.
Do you not like Alice in Chains individually?
Never cared for
Never
him too
cared for him,
much.
yeah.
It's connected to like, things that I'm just not into.
Yeah. You didn't like the whole '90s grunge thing.
No,
like, it's
not
your...
and I'm not into radio rock, right?
Right, sure.
But like this is what it did, like it was off-putting initially to me.
See, I could see that working because I like Alice in Chains and I like Thomas Pridgen and I like Weinman and I like I could see that working.
Okay.
Just subjectively, based on my preferences.
All right.
But-
Yeah. Well, because my preferences are different, it was off-putting to me
Yeah.
initially, but I didn't slam the door on it.
Right.
I've been giving it a shot for 4 months now, and I never liked it until like last week.
Okay.
So like this is the first time in a while that an album has grown on me like this.
Yeah.
Because lately in my life, all of these connections are so like instantly gratifying.
Yeah.
That there's no growing on me, but like because I'm so passionate about it, I dissect the fuck out of it. So
Right,
there's
right.
still a lot
there's
of
potential
there's
there.
still a lot of
you want to find it,
Yeah.
and you give it the time you feel like it deserves.
Well,
Yeah.
the
But-
instant gratification thing, I'm very passionate. There's a lot of dissection there, a lot of complexity for me. There's a lot
Yeah.
of intellectual value in it.
Well,
but it's not
yeah.
a broad reach.
You want
not a broad
You
reach
want to
for
make
me.
sure you understand it before you judge it. Judge
Yeah.
whether or not you like it.
Yeah.
That was always my idea behind like music preference. It's like, oh, you like that or you don't like it at face value. It's like, okay, but before you establish a preference, what you want to do is the same thing we're doing in conversation right now is like dance around the central themes, the concepts until you understand them. Once you reach understanding,
Yes.
then you see if it lines up with your preferences. But, for somebody who likes to think and feel and intuit things and like someone who has a complex view of the world, conception of reality, like how could you not like something that does take that amount of effort to understand?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if like there's been ever any bit of music that I've ever listened to that I didn't understand at first, that didn't take me a while to understand, that I didn't end up really liking in the end,
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
the more time you have to like put into just like listening to it over and over again until you see how all the parts fit. It's like that's usually the best stuff,
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's what's that project called though?
It's called
What those
Giraffe Tongue Orchestra.
Giraffe Tongue Orchestra.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so like the thing is like first single that came out, I was like, oh my god, this is a Dillinger pop song. I fucking love it. Like instant gratification, right?
They're
But I
trying to
didn't-
draw you in.
But I
'cause
didn't.
they have-
I didn't
there's
like.
something else
I didn't
coming.
like the vocals though.
Okay.
But I loved the music, But
Right.
then I listened to the album and I didn't like the music either, But like I let it grow on me for 4 months, and now I'm at the point where I realize that it's a deconstruction of 90s alternative rock, and I love that. That's fucking
Yeah.
awesome because it's the last thing Ben Weinman would do.
Right.
And it's completely subverted my expectations.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, that's why, like, I gravitate towards what I would think is postmodern,
Yeah, right.
But,
Gotcha.
But yeah, man, it really did subvert my expectations, which is such a great thing because, like, I didn't realize that, like, even though I always look for what's going to subvert my expectations, like, the thing that most subverted my expectations took me 4 months to enjoy.
Right,
You know?
yeah. I'm always like, it's like I know Thomas Pridgen can kind of do pretty much anything on drums. Like he's a fucking prodigy. But I'm always like, I don't know, with Mars Volta, I could have taken him or left him. Like I preferred John Theodore over all the other Mars Volta drummers because he fit what they did so well. I feel like on the first few albums, especially on Deloused, obviously, on the first album, but like Thomas Pridgen is just like, I hear like, oh, Thomas Pridgen's doing this new project. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'm sure the drums are gonna be bad fucking ass, you know.
Bad fucking ass.
But like, is it gonna be all Thomas Pridgen? That's my worry.
Yeah.
Do you feel like he was good at collaborating in that project? Like, before I even listened to it, did he overdo anything? Because I honestly,
in Giraffe Tongue?
yeah, because I honestly felt like he overdid some of the Mars Volta stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like he stole the show in a
here's
way
the
that
thing, man.
was kind of disappointing as far as like Mars Volta goes on the whole. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, I love his drum stuff, but I think if he toned it down a little bit, didn't. Yeah, right, just a little bit. Like, was a little smarter about like.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like, honestly, maybe he's a fucking genius, because some things I listen to by him, like in the Mars Volta specifically, is like, okay, it took me a while to get it because his drum parts are so complex. But is that drum part more and appreciating it, or is it me liking the song as a whole? And I think it's the former, you know? I think it's just me respecting what he's doing on drums more than respecting the whole. You
Maybe
know?
so,
I don't know,
man.
maybe not, but...
You know, I'm not a drummer, so I don't have as deep of a relationship with it as you do, and
Right.
I have a less objective relationship with percussion than you do. Like, if I get, you know, if I'm programming a beat in Renoise, like, I'm not thinking of it like a drummer thinks of it. I'm gonna
Sure.
put shit where it does, where you wouldn't think it would belong.
Yeah, that can have
you know?
its advantages too, though. You know, not
Yeah.
being a drummer, you're not a slave to how you play drums, your style. You know, like, you just kind of, you listen to a bunch of different bands and like, you know what the drummers do to some extent, but like, you don't know how they do it. Like, in the same way that I know how they do it. So it's like, you just go with what you want to hear when you're programming drums.
You know, the funny thing about me is, like, I just want to hear fucking kick and snare, dude. And snare rolls everywhere.
right.
Because, like, I have a super limited understanding of it, right?
Right.
But, like, because, like, I put, like, those other things that involve drums, you know, like the cymbals and fucking, you know, all of that shit, I'll probably put that in places where it doesn't belong. Maybe it might be tight as fuck.
Maybe in
know?
places where it would be impossible to play.
Exactly.
In real life.
Exactly.
You know?
But I don't,
'cause, like, I'm
I don't
always thinking
give a
about
shit,
that.
because
Right.
if I'm going to make it, you know, if I'm going to make electronic music, like, I don't really care about, you know, recreating it on a physical instrument.
Yeah.
You know? But I guess the thing about Thomas Pridgen is, like, I'm only familiar with him and being involved with the Mars Volta and this new project, Giraffe Tongue Orchestra. I'm not familiar with his other projects, and I don't know what else he's been involved in. So, like, to me, Bedlam and Goliath, like, that album was ridiculous. Like,
Yeah, it was insane.
It was the most chaotic Mars Volta album ever. It's like,
I think so,
it's like Mars Volta,
and it's his fault. It's all his fault.
But, like, I like it though.
Yeah,
it's
I do
so
too.
Chaotic.
It's my second favorite Mars Volta album.
Yeah. So, like,
behind
the thing
The
is,
Louse.
it's like, maybe
Yeah.
he was like, bruh, this is like my opportunity to just
To show the
fuck
world
shit
what I'm
up.
fucking made of.
This is my
Yeah.
opportunity to be unhinged.
Right,
Just
right.
an unhinged drummer, you know?
Yeah.
And I can respect that.
I-
But the thing
yeah.
is like, maybe I'm limited on my understanding of drums, but him and Giraffe Tongue Orchestra seems pretty tame compared to Bedlam
Okay.
and Goliath.
Okay,
you know?
I like that.
But at
Cool.
the same time, I thought Octahedron was pretty tame. He
Yeah,
was
it
on
was.
Octahedron.
Yep, that's true.
He didn't fucking go crazy. It
Yeah.
was slow as fuck music. Why would he?
Right.
You know?
Well, I mean, you're familiar with the Mars Volta's recording process, right? How they record everything in pieces. It's basically Omar doing shit on guitar, and then he
yeah.
hands the individual guitar pieces off to the other members, and they record over
Not
it.
in order, though.
Not in order, and nobody knows how it's going to come together. So, like, Omar, he knew what Thomas Pridgen was about. He knew his style. He chose him for a reason. You know,
Yeah.
he was like, okay, Bedlam and Goliath, our next album. I don't know if they had a name for it before they decided what they were going to record, but, like, you know, minor details. He probably looked at Thomas Pridgen. He was like, that's my next fucking drummer, because I want somebody who's just insane, who's chaos. You know, chaos to the max. And it's going to work for our recording style, because it always does. Like, I know what I'm doing, you know? But, like, I want somebody who's insane. Like, so we got Thomas Pridgen. And, yeah, I think he got what he wanted there, you know?
Right.
But like you said, I mean, like, Pridgen's adaptable in ways that you and I probably can't even comprehend, which is why he was so tame on Octahedron, because it was a more, like, he understands how to adapt to, like, more subtle music, you know? Like, he's not out of fucking control. He's very much in control on a level that, like, you or I probably won't ever reach on our instruments, you know?
Right.
Um,
Right. Which, like, to me, it
Which
just...
is why he pushes the boundaries and why I'm always intrigued by his drum parts. Because, like, I know that he's in control, he knows what he's doing, but at the same time, he's doing everything that every drummer wants to do all the time, is push the limits of, like, you're in that middle ground between doing too much and not doing enough in terms of your fills and everything. You know, like, you want to toggle between those two, and you don't want to cross those boundaries. You want to be, like, as creative as possible within the confines of the broader conception of the music, you know? And, like, I think that's how Omar wants to make music, you know? And, like, that's how Thomas Pridgen understands that too. Like, every good musician understands that, especially one who, like, has open fills throughout the song in a live setting, you know? And in the studio. I mean, the same thing happens in the studio. It's like, how far can I push my fills to where it's not too much for the recording? That, like, when we were recording our album, it was like, I felt like, because our songs are pretty complex, so, like, I wanted to push the limits, but I felt like I kind of held back way too much on a few parts. Like, the beginning of Heterochromatic, I could have been a little more creative. Like, the beginning of, I don't know, mainly in some of my build-ups, you know? Like, I felt like I was really robotic in, like, holding back my fills and everything. I just wanted to, like, build it up with the right amount of energy, you know, not overstep. Like, I don't want to peak before the peak is supposed to come, you know. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's like, you know, you have a broader conception of, like, what the song is trying to do. You know, and that's something that's pretty much out of your control. You were saying how, like, your creative process doesn't have any planning behind it. You know, it's just raw. It's raw. It's natural. You just let it come to you. You know, like, it's the most organic way to make music. It's the same thing with me and with us and our band in general. Like, when we jam, dude, sometimes we, like, come up with parts just jamming, like, warming up at practice that are, like, 90s grunge, like, just driving, like, a repetitive kind of, like, grungy, like, tune, and then we, like, you know, do our normal thing where we bring up the energy and bring it back down, and it fluctuates all the time. But then, like, sometimes we're playing something so insane, like, just out of nowhere, that it's like, it's something that we wouldn't even try to, like, put our other established parts with that and formulate it into a song, because we know it's just too crazy or something. Or, you know, at best we would have to, like, reconceptualize that whatever's at the core of that part, you know? But it takes repeating it over and over again to realize what is at the core of that jam, you know?
At the core?
Or, like, what's at the core of it? What's the most important part about it that you can maintain and build off of and, like work within the confines of, you know?
And that's, like, what when y'all jam on it, y'all striving towards that, right?
Well,
towards the core of a part.
I think it's unconscious, though. Like, we don't understand most of the time that's what we're doing, but I think that's what we're doing.
Okay, that's why I asked that.
Right,
because,
right.
like,
it's not planned. It's not, you know, it's not composed. It's
because, like, when
what composition is like, it's dancing around a concept in the same way that having this conversation is. Yeah. You know. Yeah. It's like, how do we change this concept and not go too far off, and then bring it back and, like, just make it work, you know? Yeah. And what's weird is, like, a lot of our songs, we can, you know, I have this theory that you can fit any two individual parts together with the right transition, but still, like, you need something else to cover what's common, you know, between those parts and among all of the parts more generally. So, like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too far off onto that tangent. That's another discussion.
Yeah,
kind of, but
I mean, my relationship with composition is just, like, it's so unconscious that it's hard to think there's any effort going on at all, you know? And, like, it seems like the only thing that sort of ends up being a conscious effort is, like, after that original thing comes out of me, maybe, like, I might sort of consciously alter it, you know? And but really, I guess it's sort of mostly just unconsciously making different connections until, like, it turns into something that I'm satisfied with. Yeah. And then I could leave it alone or something, you know? But, like, I never I'm so damn busy all the time. It's not often I sit down with my guitar, but that's the only time that I make music is when I just grab my guitar and I start writing, because as soon as my guitar is in my hands, that's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, like even like recording with Kyle yesterday, it's like while he's doing other stuff, you know, I'm basically writing new songs already. You know, like while I'm waiting on him to like, you know, dial in my tone, you know, whatever. I just unconsciously start creating something new.
Okay.
You know, and it's just like it's so effortless. Like yesterday, I ended up coming up with this riff that sort of like covered the entire neck of my instrument. Like I started, you know, at the nut and ended up at the freaking, you know, at the bridge.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, there's absolutely no effort involved whatsoever.
Okay. So I think that's why you're so hard to jam with, is because, like, would you say this is accurate of your writing style? Like, you just you write something on guitar, don't write it, you just play it. Mm-hmm. Whatever comes out, and then you just try to remember it as it comes out. You memorize it, and then you go back to it and play that over again. Like,
yeah.
Is it more just playing and memorizing rather than composition and like careful like reorganization of the idea?
Well, I guess I sort of actively reorganize it as I'm writing it.
Right.
So there is some conscious effort going on for sure.
Okay.
You know, because I don't know, man. It's difficult to describe. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it depends. You know, like sometimes like this thing will just come out of me and it's just like I don't change it at all.
Yeah.
Like it might be like just right from the start. You know. Yeah. But then like, you know, maybe this thing is more of like
How do you determine if it's right?
It might take me a while. It'll take me a while, you know, sometimes to formulate this thing, you know, like say it's just a riff, you know, like I might expand on that riff or I might subtract from it, you know.
Sure.
I might reduce it down to like something that's extremely minimal, mm-hmm. or I might take something that's already complex and then just add retarded layers of complexity on top of it.
Right.
You know, but it's not always it's not always ends up being retarded. Sometimes it ends up being pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You know, but there's definitely I guess there's definitely some conscious effort going on in it now that I think about it. It's just like I think like the effortlessness of it sort of misleads me into thinking that there isn't any thinking.
Well, yeah, because you still, like, for it to be like coherent at all, there still has to be some organization of chaos. If it just comes out in raw emotion, it's going to be chaos. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, like you're already organizing it to some extent through your technical ability to play guitar. Yeah, like it has to be organized in that sense because otherwise it would just like every note would bleed into one another and it would be incoherent, mm-hmm. you know?
Yeah.
So there has to be like on the surface, but then you're saying like on a level beyond that, you do to some extent, you kind of realize a concept that you're working with musically and you try to fine tune it.
Yeah. I do.
I mean, that's part of composition, you know,
right.
that's conscious. Like, you may do it at kind of a subconscious level. You know, you're like, oh, like I heard that, all right, that wasn't quite right. Let me just like play this note instead of that note. You know, it's mm-hmm. like, but yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess like basically it just.
I just right there. I just wanted to convince you that it was like impossible to play raw emotion. like there is some composition going on, even though you know
well,
it
you
is
did
still
convince me.
even though it is still difficult. Like once you get to the level of being sufficiently satisfied with how a part of yours is organized mm-hmm. and composed, it's still difficult for somebody to hear it and understand like the structure of it to the point that they can jam on it like right away, you mm-hmm. know? So like if you send me a guitar part that you want me to like record over or something, I'm going to spend quite a while listening to it. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm going to listen to it probably about 10 times before I'm even like coming up with like, you know, my first drum part for the first part that you're playing and then mm-hmm. like working on a transition into the second, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why like, almost think that like if you and I were to collaborate or like collaborate again, because we kind of had the thing going for a little while, we jammed a few times and then stopped, but like it would almost be easier to do it from a distance.
Yeah.
Like instead of getting together and physically jamming, it would be easier to compose from a distance.
Yeah.
I feel like so.
Now that you say that, like I feel like super bad about about Kyle because like
Oh, yeah?
you're making me realize that like because like I'm looking at this whole thing from my guitarist perspective. Like, dude, like I feel like put like a retarded amount of pressure on Kyle because I'm wanting like him to like instantly like come up with something,
that goes with what you're playing, which you think on some level is absolute chaos, right? It's like you're forcing us to conform to your chaos. It's a tall order.
That's the fucked up thing about me, man. It's like I've always
you're a self-centered motherfucker when it comes to playing music. Yeah,
I've always been in the position where like I was the primary writer.
Okay, you're right. Right. That's true.
So like people always have to conform to me. Like that's how it was.
Dustin used to tell me about his frustrations playing with you and arguing semantics. Like I was like, they're fucking. Their name fits so well with what they do. It's like they're arguing over the semantics that Jake is spilling out of his heart through his guitar. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's
chaos, man.
I think you just made me realize that like that's a big direction that I need to focus on in growing myself. Is being like maybe I need to try to conform better to the people I collaborate with.
Yeah, that's what collaboration's for.
Because
it's about reformulating your conception of your musical reality. It's the same thing we're doing in conversation. It's like respect. Like pay attention to what other people are doing creatively to the same extent that you're paying attention to me now and I'm paying attention to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a one-way street. Like, and if you do want to take the route, if you want to say, okay, this is going to be my project, I just need somebody to play drums on it, and you want to do that with me, for example, and like the best way to do that would be just to send me shit so you can give me the time to independently work through it, rather than like trying to jam with each other and like organize chaos when it's like really just me first trying to comprehend what the fuck is going on, and then trying to like, come up with a part that fits, which is not easy to do in any sense. But I mean, unless you're playing country music, but
Well, like Kyle, dude, man, he really learned. I think he really learned how I work.
Okay.
And he doesn't allow me to completely go unhinged in my creative effort. Like I think he's like, hey, bro. That was dumb. Like, just take that one thing out, and it would just work a lot better.
Yeah.
And like, or a lot of times where he really probably keeps me in check is when we actually go to lay down the guitar tracks. Like that's where like he's, because like from my standpoint, if I'm just focused on like raw chaotic emotion, like my ego's too fucking big at that point. You know what I mean? So like, but like. When we go into his studio and start laying down the actual music, like that's when he starts to like, really, really put his own 2 cents into it, you know? And, but yeah, there's definitely like, definitely I need to focus on conforming a little more.
Yeah.
It's like, I guess the thing is like, because I view art as like this thing that is provided so that I can be subversive and just do what the fuck I want, Like I'm like, well, like I should be unhinged and liberal, just completely liberal. But
and you're just using the people you're collaborating with to express your own
which is
thing.
Fucked up, man.
Yeah, I think it is. Like when you think about it, like in the context of this conversation, like but it's like that's why I can't remember if it was you I was talking about with this, but it's why certain music is so one-dimensional. Like Trent Reznor's stuff, 9 Inch Nails. I mean, it's good, but I've never been super into it because it's so self-centered to him. Mm-hmm. It's so one-dimensional. Like 9 Inch Nails does one thing all the time. It never really changes that much. Like even in the context of a song, in the context of an album, in the context of his project. You know, like you know what to expect from Nine Inch Nails. There are some songs that differ slightly from others, and obviously that's going to happen. You know, but you have to break it up. But my idea of collaborating is like you do have to conform to some degree. You have to negotiate with people like conceptually and through words, talking about what you're aiming at, you know.
Yeah.
But is he even capable of stepping outside of himself and collaborating with people creatively? You know, it seems like all the creativity comes from him, and he just uses the other people to play the technical instruments, you know, that he can't play in live settings and on the albums and stuff. Even though like he programs a lot of shit, you know.
Yeah.
But as opposed to like what would like a similar project be? Well, I would say that like Tool is kind of from the same era. Maybe had some of the same influences as a band on the whole. But like they all make a creative contribution and they're more dynamic, you know? Like, I mean, say what you will about Tool, you may like them, you may not like, but I think what I'm getting at is like they're more dynamic creatively than Nine Inch Nails are, you know? Like each album is kind of an evolution of their general direction as a band, and each album's a little different stylistically. You know, it's almost as if like Nine Inch Nails is like one thing all the way through. You know,
Yeah.
their style doesn't fluctuate as much from album to album and song to song as like Tool does.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, as a listener, I have not listened to Nine Inch Nails or Tool very much.
Right.
But my impression of them, that makes sense that Tool would be more dynamic because Tool is so polyrhythmic and
Yeah.
you know, there's so much complexity in like the actual like composition of their riffs individually that you know, I don't really see that as much in Nine Inch Nails. It's more
very simple.
straightforward,
It's very
you
simple.
know?
Yeah. But it's because Trent Reznor's the only one being creative. You know.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't see drums as an area that he wants any like creativity at all in his music in particular. Like he just wants a simple doom tap doom tat, you know. And that's what he does.
Yeah.
Now he brings some drummers on tour. I loved when he toured with Josh Freese, because like he allowed Josh Freese to be creative in the live shows. And he was within the confines of what's acceptable according to Trent Reznor, you know? But, like, you can't tell Josh Freese just to not be creative, you know? Like, he's just that kind of but he's subtly creative at the same time. He's very tame, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you listen to A Perfect Circle, like, every fill that Josh Freese did was perfect. Like, it was never too much and it was never not enough. Like, you get the sense that he never really goes off, you know?
Yeah.
But you also get the sense that, like, man, he never put one beat wrong. He never did a roll where he shouldn't have. He never, like, hit this particular, like, crash cymbal where he shouldn't have, you know? It just seems perfect. It's right for what they do, you know? He's just, like, highly adaptable. And, like, so it actually showed that, you know, when he toured with Nine Inch Nails, I don't know who the hell is playing with Nine Inch Nails now. Like, when he tours, I know Ray Luthier was doing it, the guy from Korn, a little bit. But, like, when Josh Freese was there, it's like, Josh Freese showed some creative potential in Nine Inch Nails' music, which I was like, damn. Like, if they had done something kind of like this on the recordings, I'd probably be more into Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's just, like, my general point is, like, you know, the one-dimensional stuff doesn't really appeal to me, you know? Which is why I think I was, like, I didn't make the extra effort. I didn't go the extra mile to jam with you all those times, was because, like, I felt like I didn't realize that this was why at the time. But I felt like it was one-dimensional in your direction, you know? And, like, of course, like, complex parts on guitar sometimes call for complex parts on drums, but I almost felt like your parts called for a more simple thing on drums because, like, I was like, okay, given, like, the part that exists, what can I do in the confines of that? And I just kept having simple drum parts come to mind. Like,
Yeah.
and I tried to complexify it, and I was like, is that too much? Does this fit? You know?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was like, yeah, that was why, without my realizing it at the time. And this was like, what, 2 years ago almost? Like,
Probably so, man.
over a year
Probably
ago. Yeah.
so.
It's been a little while since we jammed.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess like the reason why I thought we would make a good collaborations because I was like, you know, like he's my Zach Hill.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like the thing is like what, you know, we've already established that I have a limited understanding of drumming, you know, so like
Right.
how do you define Zach Hill as a drummer? Because to me he's creatively unhinged, and he probably
Yeah.
like, to me, like, he doesn't give a shit about putting things where they shouldn't go.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah. Yeah, well, so look at what he does with, I don't even know the guitarist's name from Hella.
mhm.
But look at what he does in Bygones with Nick Reinhardt from Terra Melos. Dude, I thought they were fucking perfect together. I
Dude.
love the shit out of
Sick.
Bygones. I think that's one of the best Zach
Sick.
Hill projects there is.
I agree,
And
man.
they only did one fucking album, and they never went on tour. I was like, fuck, man. This is like the best thing Zach Hill's ever done, and I don't get any more than this one album that's recorded
Yeah.
shittily. It's just like, dude, it's like Zach Hill set up one overhead mic on his drum set, and then he just went off, and that's the
Yeah.
fucking recorded drum part. And then Nick Reinhardt did like the same thing on guitar. It's
Yeah.
did they
It's
record
absurd,
everything?
dude.
Did they record everything live?
I
Do
don't
you
know.
know? I
I don't
think they
know.
did, dude.
All I know is there's this one song, and I don't know the name of it, and it ends with this fucking riff that Nick plays.
Yeah, over and over and over
and
again.
it's so long. It's the
Yeah.
longest riff, dude.
You never
it,
know when it's gonna
It
end.
takes forever for
Yeah.
like the actual riff to circle back on itself and repeat.
Yeah.
But he plays that shit for like fucking 3 minutes,
I know.
and I never want it to end.
Yeah, I
like
know.
3 minutes is too fucking short, dude.
know.
Like, it's that good that
I know
it's just
exactly
it
what you're
feels
talking
like it shouldn't end. It feels like it should be played for eternity. It's ridiculous.
No,
and I love it.
I completely agree, man. And I just thought that album was so fucking good. But like, okay, so I could be your Zach Hill if you could be my Nick Reinhardt.
Yeah.
I think my style could potentially be closer to Zach Hill's than yours could be to Nick Reinhardt, because I think you're more like technical.
Mhm.
And I mean that like not abstractly, but like more black and white technical in just the way, in your like stylistic way that you play notes on guitar than Nick Reinhardt is. Like
Yeah.
there's a little more bleeding going on, you know, in his riffs.
Yeah.
There's a little more like the transitions aren't as abrupt,
Right.
you know. And Zach Hill, you know, he meshes with that perfectly because like he's abrupt in how intense he is, but his transitions are pretty smooth. Weirdly,
Yeah.
you know, like he's good at. Actually, sometimes they're very gradual. You know, like when he's going from one part to the next, you can't exactly pinpoint where the first part ends and the second part begins on drums alone. You know, you need the guitar to like mesh with it to hear that.
Right.
But that was one cool thing about. I think Hella is less that way than Bygones. I think Bygones is a little more. I don't know. I would have to think about that actually.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, to me, I find Bygones to be more like well thought out than Hella.
Yeah.
Hella seems more primal to me.
Yeah, I agree
Hella
with that.
seems less complex and more primal.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think, and more linear. Hella seems more linear
Yep,
to
yep.
me.
That's why I prefer Bygones actually.
Yeah, I agree, man, and definitely like my writing style. Like I've noticed that sometimes I become in danger of getting linear.
I think that's the word I was looking for. You are very linear.
Yeah.
And you're very abrupt in your transitions. It goes from one part to the other, and there's no like energy fluctuation within the confines of one particular part. You know what I mean? It's like there's plenty of fluctuation over the course of an entire song.
Yeah.
But it goes from like, you ever listen to Walk Through Walls?
Mm-mm.
It's like what they do. They go like they have this like screamo, like in your face, like hardcore side to them, and then they also have this like pretty like indie picking on guitar sort of side to him, and they bounce back and forth between the two very abruptly. They never merge the two.
Mm-hmm.
They merge them within a song, but they go from one to the other, back to the other, back to the other, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
crazy. I used to fucking love that shit, man. That was one of the... No, it's just cool that, like, I'm playing with David and Grant now, because, like, they played in Walk Through Walls, and, like,
Yeah.
they were... Like, Walk Through Walls was one of my main inspirations, and Tony Bergeron was one of my main inspirations to, like, play drums, honestly. Like, when I was little kid.
Yeah.
That story was funny. That dude who went to my church who claimed that he was the drummer of that band, because Tony's drums were just fucking awesome on that album. And I was like, damn, dude, you're a fucking awesome drummer. And, like, and then my cousin brought me to a show when I was, like, 13. Or, no, I was, like, 12. It was right before... No, I was 13. Because I just started playing drums. And then, like, I saw Walk Through Walls. It was, like, one of my favorite fucking bands that I ever saw. I felt like, you know, a fucking Radiohead fan seeing Radiohead for the first time. You know what I mean? Like,
That's awesome, man.
and then I was like, fucking Joey Eden, the drummer of that band, guy from church. It's like, what is he talking about? Giving me this burnt fucking CD. But their style was
transitions are definitely my weak point. You know, like, even though you have made me realize just now that, like, there is conscious effort that goes into my compositions, there's probably a lot less conscious effort than most people who compose music.
Right.
So, like,
It's
that's
still chaotic.
why my
It's
transitions
linear,
are so
yeah.
damn abrupt.
it's linear but chaotic.
Yeah.
Chaotic in the you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. I get you, man.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I'm definitely not uninterested in collaborating. I still want to do it, you know?
Yeah.
And I've still, like, always wanted to do it. It's just, like, finding the middle ground between our two styles of writing, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's the most difficult part, because you think of any supergroup band, you know, that takes what you might think are, like, the best members of each of these bands and put them together, and it's like, well, I love each of those individual bands. This must be awesome. Like, it's going to work, right? But some supergroups are, like, the worst fucking bands
Most
ever.
of them.
Most of them suck dick. Yeah. Because they don't find that middle ground between their styles of composition and creativity in general.
Yeah.
Like, they might just
like-
not, you know?
It's like Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson not
It
being
is.
able to reach across that broad divergence.
It is.
You know?
Except, like...
But if they could, it would be amazing.
Right, I think so, because, like, Sam Harris is so technical and, like, Peterson is so wise, you know? But I mean, again, like we said before, you know, like, Peterson is also technical. He's not sloppy on the technical end of things, you know, like some wise people are, you know? He has both sides. Sam Harris only has one side. So,
Right.
like, I see Harris as being a drug addict. Like, he's a drug addict that needs to realize for himself the broader sphere in which he's gone wrong in his
Right.
thinking. And until he does that for himself, there's nothing Peterson can do to convince him. Because Peterson would have to use technicalities to convince him, but the truth of the problem isn't in the technicalities. It's in the broader sphere, you know, that Harris isn't seeing yet. So I'm not saying there's no potential there. Like, I'm just saying, like, he has to kill his habits. He has to kill his addiction to his way of thinking. He needs to broaden his understanding of his problem.
Right.
You know,
I mean,
it's personal. It's a personal problem.
If he doesn't do that, he won't be able to recognize that they could reach across that divergent, you know, those two.
Exactly.
You know, they can't. I don't think he realizes that he could reach across it because
Right.
he's not given any.
I think anybody's capable of it. I think
Yeah.
anybody's capable of enlightenment, so to speak.
Every thought experiment he conjured up in that podcast was with the intention to debate and destroy the other's viewpoint, not with the intention to make a connection.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
he has to do exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Or you won't be able to make that connection.
He
I
needs
do
to do
believe
some
that
fucking
Peterson. I do believe that Peterson. I do believe that he does see that connection can be reached. You know?
He does. He definitely does. That's what he was talking about in his open letter following the podcast. You know, that's exactly what he pointed on. He's like, I feel like there is something we can do here. Whereas and do on a broader level of conversation and complexity, outside the sphere of like the technicalities. But when Harris says what seems to be the same thing, like I feel like there's something I'm missing here. What he's really saying is, give me a singular, simplified explanation or example on my lower level of analysis that'll put the broader thing into perspective.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that misses the point entirely.
Yeah.
He's so focused on like actually committing the single cause fallacy. Like, give me a singular explanation to the problem that we're having, and then we can move forward. Mm-hmm. And Peterson's like, no, just like, no. Right?
Yeah. Man. He's definitely extremely one-dimensional in that sense.
Right. He's Trent Reznor in this situation, and totally self-centered, and Peterson like sees that, but he's like also, but Peterson's an emotional guy, man. He got frustrated and he got one-dimensional in his line of argumentation too,
right.
In trying to like convince Harris of the broader truths and all this stuff, but. He got one-dimensional in his way of doing that because he got stirred up,
And Sam Harris is like one-dimensional without passion, without emotion. So like
it's lifeless, man.
What is there? Yeah. What is there to be interested in?
Yeah.
I do find him interesting in other podcasts, because like usually the person he's talking to is like open enough to allow him to completely just not have to debate with it. Whereas like, I mean, Peterson is definitely more open than Harris, but both of their egos were kind of getting in the way, right?
Yeah, that's what caused the one.
But like, I guess like Harris can't let like anybody's ego get in the way, So he does fine on Rogan's podcast because Rogan's so good at paying attention.
Right, he is.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Rogan's like, Rogan is okay with someone coming in there and not exploring higher truths. Like, Rogan adapts to the level of analysis, the level of complexity that his guest wants to operate on. Yeah. And he stays within those confines. Mm-hmm. Like, Peterson is less agreeable in that sense. Mm-hmm. Peterson's going to say, no, right, but I'm ultimately searching for truth. Like, so let's broaden this, see if we can account for more variables, and if we can't, then... And so like every time Peterson tried to broaden the conversation to account for more variables with Harris like he held back from that. He was like, no, that's a change of topic. It's like, no, it's not at all a change of topic. It's just a broadening of the topic that you're on to try to account for more levels of truth, So I think that like that was the main fundamental point that he was missing, but like Rogan, like you said, Rogan is super good at just adapting and and going with the flow, and that's why he appeals to so many different people. That's why he's the number one podcast in the world.
Right.
Like, is he number one? I think he is.
I don't know. He's close.
I haven't looked at the charts in a while, but every time I've looked at him, it was like JRE top of the list.
Yeah.
I was like, I understand this. Like, he's Oprah Winfrey for guys. That's what Rogan is. And he's hilarious. Fucking good at it,
Yeah. Man, dude, that black tea is like giving me the jitters.
It is high in caffeine.
I've never had that issue, but I think it's probably because like before I drove here, my sister made me some espresso.
Oh,
so
okay.
Like, I normally don't get the jitters, but for some reason I'm struggling with this physical problem inside of me right now.
It's Lapsang tea, by the way, from India. Lapsang black tea. Yeah, it's pretty strong. I'm pretty sensitive. Like, I feel like I can only have like one little 8-ounce cup of coffee, or else I get the fucking jitters and it doesn't feel good. I feel like unsettled. But one thing that is good about it is like it does like keep my mind fucking turning. Like it keeps like my thought process just like going in a fucking loop. Like I might get circular content wise. It may not expand like. Any, I mean, they say like some amount of caffeine is good for the brain, and then too much is, well, I mean, obviously too much of anything is bad, like, and addictive. But I feel like my threshold for what's too much is pretty low.
Yeah. Well,
as far as caffeine goes, I don't have a caffeine habit though. I don't drink tea or coffee every day. So
me neither. And where I'm at right now, man, is just like like I'm shivering so much that it's
Yeah.
starting to get in the way. You know, like it could help my
It's
you
probably-
know my mental cycle.
It's probably
but,
kind of
like,
nipping here too.
it's obstructing me. You know,
yeah.
like it's distracting me from
Well, we've been going for
because it's a little uncomfortable. But
hour and 41 minutes. Do you feel like you want to go any longer, or do you want to stop?
I can keep going. It really doesn't matter,
Yeah.
man. Like I know if this ends up being, you know, a worthwhile conversation, you
Yeah.
know, if I do believe that as far as like our conceptual frameworks
Yeah.
of reality, I still think that we're pretty close to converging at those poles, you know.
Yeah.
But like if you imagine that our timeline is along that great circle,
Yeah.
around the globe, and that we actually circle it.
Yeah.
Like if we were ever to do this thing again, I would hope we would be at the equator where we're most divergent.
Okay. Yeah.
Because then we could have a broader reach, and it might be more of a
Sure.
challenge to actually, you know, make connections.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
but with saying that, you have definitely opened up my eyes to some things today. You know,
Okay.
as far as like how I work artistically, creatively.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you definitely really grabbed something out of me and made me realize how how I could be in danger of becoming very one dimensional.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Get your head out of your fucking ass.
yeah, definitely.
Creatively. No, it's hard to do, man, because like if you take that approach to creativity, like where what you want to do is just communicate raw emotion and feeling, like it's hard to collaborate with people because you want to send your conceptual message in the purest form, you know. But like
and it's turned me into a control freak, maybe.
Right.
To a little bit, you know, which
Yeah.
is not good.
No, it's really hard. Maybe just like it'll cause you to like think about what making music with other people is about more generally. You know,
Yeah.
like it is about collaboration, and that's one reason I have a love-hate relationship with it. Because I would prefer to do what you do. Like I would
Yeah.
prefer to just like make all of my music my way from home. But
Right.
like. And like I come up with guitar parts in my head all the time, but I don't know how to technically play guitar. You know, like I could probably figure out how to write it on program, but it would sound inorganic.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do that. I would prefer to have a real guitar, but like again, it's like I don't know. Maybe there's a way for me to channel my like ideas about composition, like that I want to hold to myself and not collaborate with anybody on. Maybe there's like something else I could use besides a guitar sound on like some other programs, you know. I'm
Right.
still learning like the absolute basics about making music from my computer. But one thing I have decided is that like any electronic music that I make, I'm going to put real drums to. So it's going to be like, you ever heard Zorch?
Yeah.
Yeah, Zorch from Sargent House Records. They only made that one album.
I imagine that they play live synths though. Like
They do.
Like the guy is actually technically skilled at playing that instrument. It's not
Yeah.
just programmed
Yeah.
IDM.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, he does. I've seen some live videos of him. I've never seen him live, but yeah, I've seen in videos. He has like a bunch of, synths and keyboards and laptops and shit. I don't know what the fuck he's doing, but he's doing something, and it sounds like the album for the most part. And they do a lot of improvisation and stuff too live. I don't think they're even together anymore, but I thought they were fucking awesome. I thought that album was kick ass because it was like electronic stuff with real drums to it, and it was like. I don't know. It was just super dynamic. I liked every fucking song on that album. You know.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty brilliant, and like I want to emulate that concept, but obviously like through my own like creativity and like do. But yeah, it's
Your own state of being. Just take that concept and apply it to who you are.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Let's say we end the recording right here and maybe pick it up again some other time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to chop this up too much. I feel like there's not too much to do.
Well, can I say one thing before we end it?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
Honestly, I was gonna say this before we dove into the conversation, but I just didn't because I didn't care at the time.
Okay.
But Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just gonna apologize for my dumb South Louisiana accent. I hope it's not too off-putting. Maybe if you do, maybe you might want to chop this part and put it in the beginning. I don't care if you don't even use it, you know.
Yeah.
But it is like an insecurity of mine that I wanted to present. I just wanted to acknowledge it because I don't think it's worth. Talking about really, but I just felt like it was worth acknowledging because I am insecure about it.
Okay, understood. Well, like, linguistically speaking, like, it's a natural thing and it's not something to be like ashamed of necessarily, but I don't know, maybe it's just because I know you and I've been knowing you for a long time, and like, I mean, I probably don't hear it as much as like some of the people who listen to this are going to hear it, but I guess what I'm saying is it really doesn't fucking matter. And and your accent, I can say for sure that your accent isn't nearly as strong as like it could be if you were from like down the bayou, like La Rose or Gordon Maddow or something like that. Like, it's not quite like that. So like, it's definitely not gonna matter to anyone. I'm pretty damn sure.
Well, I have become very aware of it. Like, just moving to Houston, man. Like,
people probably point it out all the time. Huh?
Well, people don't really point it out, but I'm self-conscious of it. Like, and like, I'm not self-conscious enough to make a difference. Like, I don't actually like put any effort into like revising the way I speak. Like, because people do that.
Honestly, it'll probably happen naturally. You don't have to try. If you live in Houston or a place where people don't speak with a Louisiana accent for long enough, it'll probably go away. And then it'll come back when you come back for the holidays and spend time around your family and your dad especially, Well, I don't know. Well, both your parents have it, huh?
I think mostly my mom.
Veronica says, that's true.
Veronica always says that like she doesn't really understand why my accent is so thick, because she says that like me and my mom have a thick accent and like nobody else does. No, I'm not a mama's boy. I hung out with my dad most of the time. Yeah. When I was, he took me do all kind of shit, Like,
yeah. Where did you breastfeed?
I have no idea. Probably. You don't know? Yeah. I'm sure I did.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure I did both, right? I'm sure I did. I breastfed.
I didn't breastfeed at all. I didn't breastfeed at all. I mean, some people breastfeed 100%. Others are Gerber babies.
So
I was a Gerber baby. Some do a combination.
Her accent out of her titties, man.
Exactly. That's what I was getting at. Yeah. Hey, Jake's mom's titties. Let's end it on a good note. Sorry, Kelly.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I brought up anybody from my personal life into this podcast.
Yeah,
that would rather not be talked about on the internet.
Right.
If this ends up being on the internet.
Oh, it'll be on the fucking internet. Probably tonight. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I understand that a podcast can maybe go wrong and not end up being very valuable.
Yeah. No, I
know that's probably a decision you're gonna have to make when you do any sort of editing that you would do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not gonna chop it up too much. We'll see.